Catch up to her quick. She hit that as soon as she hit bottom. Come on. Little bitty squirt. Pretty though, pretty. Oh, see you, bud. So guys, you may be wondering, why am I out here in a t-shirt in the middle of January? Well, we live in Alabama and the weather's pretty bipolar, and depending on where you live, you may be experiencing that too. But one of the main questions that I get from a lot of you guys is, I hadn't been fishing in a while and I'm planning on going. How do I go about, finding fish and catching fish? And I'll go ahead and be honest with you, a little bit of knowledge, a lot of confidence, and the right baits, and you'll be successful in the water. So we're gonna talk about that today. If you hadn't checked out the last video, make sure to check that out, because I talk about the areas a lot and I go into heavy detail about it, I even show it on my maps and stuff like that. But today we're going to be talking about how you can build that confidence. I'm going to share a little bit of knowledge that you'll definitely need whenever you get back out there. Maybe you capped out on deer and you're looking to go fishing or something like that. But either way, let's talk about it. Stay tuned. This is something you don't want to miss.
Today on Dink Central.
Better? Well, come on. He's coming, but he got a lot of fight in him. See you, bud. Got one. Better one. Feels like not a big one, but I don't know. That might be a good one. Yeah, it's good. Good old football spot. Not a pro football, like junior high, something like that. There we go. Pretty thing. Boy, she's healthy, ain't she? Out right in the roof of the mouth. This thing about these spotted bass, she's healthy. Pretty fish. So talking about the knowledge, there's a few things you need to understand when it comes to wintertime fishing. Metabolism's a slow down. So as the temperature starts to cool down, these fish, their metabolisms are not as high. That's the reason they're not as active as they typically are, during the summer when you see us ripping, romping, jerking, popping, all that good stuff. You don't really need to do all that. There's a couple of different baits that I like to use, and I talked about it in my January baits video. I also talked about it in the last video, especially what I'm using today, the Ned rig, which just seems to always get a ton of bites if you want to just catch a ton of fish. Doesn't mean you don't need to be patient. So this is where kind of the confidence part comes in. You don't need to necessarily throw this bait just a couple times and hope for the best. If it don't work out, you're running, ripping, and romping everywhere. Look for those areas that are steep and fish the bait with confidence. So throw that bait out there and give it an honest chance from the time you throw it towards the bank all the way back to the boat, and you'll get a lot more bites doing that. Now, with metabolisms being lower, we want stuff that's more subtle. When it comes to our soft plastic straight tail baits, when it comes to our hard baits, we want something lazy. It's got a lazy action to it. There's a few exceptions, like with the wiggle wart and things like that, but 99% of the time, we want something more subtle. Now, to trigger more bites, that's where the confidence comes in, because if you're fishing that bait thoroughly from the bank to the boat, you're naturally going to get more bites because you're staying in that strike zone longer. So any bait that you're using, if I'm throwing a crankbait, let's say I was throwing a crankbait down this wall, what I would do is line the front of my boat up with that drop off, and then I would bring that crankbait down that drop off the entire time. What that's going to do is increase my odds of getting a bite. Just because there's fish on the wall does not always mean that they're going to bite. So having that confidence to stay in the strike zone longer, you're typically going to get bit more. There's a bite. Got a good head shake too. Come here, old boy. Woo. They cold, but I'm warm, thank goodness. See, bud. So one of the biggest things is understanding where these bass are coming from, right? So, you know, we've ended fall, on into winter, and you've probably skipped a couple months of fishing. So, you know, you've kind of got to understand where these fish were coming from and where they are now. So a lot of times during the fall, these fish like to move up in pockets. It's not that fish don't move off the main lake. Some of them do, some of them don't. It's just like the spawn, you know, with these spotted bass. Some spotted bass will just spawn out on the main lake. They don't care. But most of these fish are going to go to areas where water is more stable. And that's the reason, you know, these drop-offs, these channel swings, these bluff walls, things like that is going to be more productive naturally. Because all these fish have to do is move up and down. When they're chasing bait, you'll typically see them chasing it down, you know, the bluff wall or whatever kind of drop-off they're dealing with. Sometimes they'll move up on flats and they'll push off the flats as the day progresses and as things slow down when you're fishing. But looking for any areas where there's a steep drop-off and fishing those subtle baits thoroughly. So I was up on that flat and I dropped this bait off of the flat. And as I come off of that flat, it dropped down about 5 or 6 more foot. And that's where I could just caught that last fish. Right off that flat area. It's a fish. Seemed like a good one. Yeah. The thickness.
In the thickness.
There she goes.
Belly on that dude.
Pretty spot.
Appreciate the bite.
There's a bite. Yeah. That's a good one. Come on, bud. Look at him go. I love it when they jump. Oh, golly. That's an old large head, sir. Pretty large mouth. And a giant. So guys, how do you build confidence in a bait? This is gonna be one of those things where you're gonna have to put your foot down and say, I'm gonna learn to fish this, okay? Because at certain times of the year, these baits outshine each other. That's the reason, you know, during spring, I'm mainly running, you know, a square bill crankbait wide open because they're just absolutely annihilated all spring long. You know, during the winter, these, straight tail baits and stuff like that. But the main thing is getting out on the water and just pick up a bait and say, this is the tool and this is the key, okay? Quit thinking of your baits as, oh, this looks good, or oh, this color is so nice, blah, blah, blah. Think of it as a tool. What can I get, you know, what bait can I use to get this bait into the treetop, through these rocks? What's going to be more productive in this particular area? Think of your baits more as tools and not necessarily as those pretty shiny things that, you know, usually catch our eye. Got it. Come up slow, boy, didn't he? Oh yeah. All right. Well, I went to take the hook out and hooked him again. Another large head. All right, so once again, guys, keep everything simplistic, everything kind of looking lethargic, you know, straight tail worms, your tight wiggling baits, move things slower. Look for those areas that have deep drop-offs. This is not a massive point, which is why we're so close to it. There's a drop-off on both sides, and towards the end of it, about 30 foot off the bank maybe, and it drops off into deeper water. These fish can suspend in those areas. All they got to do is move up and down to be in more stable water conditions. But they're lethargic, They're not eating a whole lot. The water temperature, you know, is I think it's 54 today actually, so it's come up a couple of degrees, but you know, we're still dealing with water conditions that's under 55 degrees. So you know, their metabolisms will slow down. You need to slow down. Pick up different baits this time of year. Just because it's cold, just because these fish are lethargic, does not mean you can't catch multiple fish throughout a day. Okay, just keep changing up baits, but give things an honest chance. When you're using that tool, that bait that I want you to think of as a tool, when you're using a specific bait in a specific area that goes through that area very well, fish it very thoroughly, guys. Either way, I appreciate you stopping by. I'll see you next time.